Hello, and today I'm going to be talking about the PlayStation 2. Now, the PlayStation 2, as you can see, I have the slim model. Now, this model does use the same cables, I believe, has two USB ports, and only has two controller ports, which is disappointing, because all of its competitors had four. So the Model 2, the slimmer model, opens up like that, but the original one had a tray that came out similar to the Xbox 360. So the other competitors, the Sega Dreamcast and the Nintendo GameCube and eventually the Xbox, if you can even call the Dreamcast a competitor, it failed almost as soon as this thing came out. So it only has two controller ports, like I said, which is very disappointing. See, now you need multi-tap. So it had a DualShock controller, which is really nice. It had two joysticks, similar to the GameCube controller, except the GameCube controller is very, very strange. Had a, what are they don't call them L and R, it's 1 and 2. So they have four of those kind of shoulder buttons. It has a simple layout of triangle, circle, square, and X. A nice D-pad. And, yeah, it's a nice controller. It has analog, start, and select. So, the PlayStation 2 was the most selling console of all time. It sold more units than anything else. And the console that sold the second amount of units, the most sold, was the PlayStation 1. So this thing is the most popular console of all time. And it officially had 4,000 games made for it. It had a lot of games. Now, its main competitor wasn't really anything, because the Xbox was a failed console. It's hard to believe because there's Xbox One, Xbox 360, but it didn't make any money, because people are kind of suspicious when new companies were pulling out consoles, because think of Panasonic 3DO and CDI. Those were random companies out of the blue making consoles. So when Microsoft out of the blue made a console, no one really knew how well it was going to be. So not a whole lot of people bought it. And it lost Microsoft money. And Microsoft knew that. But the reason they did it was because they knew once people figured out it was a decent console, and they knew that their later consoles, the Xbox 360, would also make money. So the PlayStation 2 had really no competition. But when it came out, they were sending units to Japan, and they didn't send enough. They barely sold any. Or they barely shipped any, because they had a shortage of chips that they needed. Similar to the Dreamcast, they didn't have certain parts. So they couldn't make as many to ship to Japan. But overall, the system sold, I can't remember, I think it's 200 million units. It really is a very popular console. And overall, it's very nice. It's backwards compatible with PlayStation games. I've got Hubert from Atari in there. Yeah, poor old Atari, not in the business. Jaguar killed it. And so did the Lynx. But that's the PlayStation 2. It has a lot of great games. It had the best 3D effects at the time. And just generally a great console. I mean, there's nothing bad about it except 2 controller ports when GameCube, Xbox, and Dreamcast had 4. But it was a good console overall. And it it was, like I said, it was extremely popular. 4,000 games and 200 million units. Best-selling console of all time. Thank you for watching my PlayStation 2 history or review.